Chapter 16. Preparing for the Wedding. I was a little nervous before seeing Mr. Rochester next morning. Was I really going to marry him, or was it all a dream? But I soon felt calmer when he came to meet me and kissed me. "Jane, you look well and smiling and pretty," he said. "You will be Jane Rochester in 4 weeks' time, not a day more. I'll send for my family jewels, which are kept in a London bank. They are for my bride, whether she's a great lady or a governess." "Oh, no, sir," I cried. "I'm too plain for jewels. I'm not used to wearing them." "I insist, Jane. Today I'm taking you in the carriage to Millcote to buy you some elegant clothes. In a month's time we'll have a quiet wedding in the local church, and after a few days in London we'll travel through all the countries of Europe." "Well, sir, you seem very eager to please me, but I wonder if you will agree to a request of mine." "Ask me anything, Jane, anything." "Indeed I will. This is my request. I ask you not to give me jewels and fine clothes." "If that's really your wish, I agree. But can't you think of anything I can give you?" "Well, I'd like you to give me the answer to a question." He looked worried and turned away from me. "Curiosity is dangerous," he said. "I may not be able to agree to this particular request. But what is it?" "How stern you look. I suppose that's how you will look when we're married. This is what I want to know. Why did you take such trouble to make me believe you wished to marry Miss Ingram?" He stopped frowning at once and smiled down at me. "Is that all? What a relief. All right. I shall have to confess, although you may be angry with me, Jane, as angry as you were last night when you told me we were equal. Well, I pretended to love Miss Ingram, to make you madly jealous. I wanted you to be as much in love with me as I was with you. And I suppose you didn't care at all about poor Miss Ingram's feelings. She only has one feeling, pride. Were you jealous, Jane? Never mind, Mr. Rochester. One more request. Please explain everything to Mrs. Fairfax. She looked so shocked last night." When I visited the old housekeeper later that day, I found she was amazed by the news that I was going to marry the master. "I would never have thought it," she kept repeating. "Mr. Rochester, so proud and such a gentleman, to marry his governess." She examined me closely, as if to discover the reason for this strange event, and shook her head, still puzzled. "He's 20 years older than you. He could be your father." "No, indeed, Mrs. Fairfax," I replied crossly. "He looks much younger than that." "Is he really going to marry you for love?" she asked. I was so hurt by her amazement that tears came to my eyes. "Why?" I asked. "Do you think he couldn't possibly love me?" "No, Miss Eyre, but you must realise that this is a very unusual situation. You must be careful of your reputation. I advise you to keep him at a distance until you are married." Although I was upset by the old lady's words, I followed her advice, and in the weeks before the wedding, I went on teaching Adele as usual. Only in the evenings did I spend some time with Mr. Rochester, and I was careful not to allow him to hold me in his arms or kiss me. Sometimes he was angry with me and called me a hard little thing or a cruel spirit, but I preferred that to being called my darling. I saw that Mrs. Fairfax approved of my correct behaviour, and I knew that he respected me for it, but it was not easy for me. I would rather have shown him my love. My future husband was becoming my whole world, and more than that, my hope of heaven. At last, the night before the wedding arrived. My clothes were packed and I was ready. But I was anxious to see Mr. Rochester, who had been away on business, so I ran out of the quiet house to meet him on the road. A wild, stormy wind was blowing, and in the garden I passed the wreck of the great tree. Then suddenly I saw him riding towards me. "You see," he shouted, "you can't do without me. Jump up onto my horse." Together we rode back to Thornfield. While he ate dinner, I sat quietly beside him. He looked closely at me. "You look sad, Jane," he said. Is anything wrong? Are you nervous about your new life?" "No," I replied firmly. "I'm not worried about that because I love you. But last night I had a strange dream, a terrible dream. It was dark and windy outside, and before I went to sleep, I could hear a dog growling in the distance. In my dream, I was carrying a small child in my arms down a long road. I was trying to catch up with you, but I couldn't." "And you still worry about a foolish dream when I'm close to you? But say you love me again, Jane." "I do love you, Edward, but I haven't finished my story." "Is there more? Well, go on." "I dreamed that Thornfield was totally destroyed, just a heap of stones. I was still carrying the child, but now I could see you riding away into the distance. I knew you would never come back. Then I woke up." "That's all then, Jane? Nothing to worry about?" "No, wait. There was candlelight in my room, and a strange shape examining the wedding dress hanging in my cupboard. My blood ran cold. It wasn't Mrs. Fairfax or any of the servants. It wasn't even Grace Poole. It was a horrible sight." "Describe the shape, Jane." "It looked like a tall woman, with long, thick, dark hair hanging down. She took up the beautiful veil you bought me, put it on her own head, then turned to admire herself in the mirror. It was then that I saw her wild, inhuman face. She removed the veil, tore it in two, and threw it on the floor." "And then?" Mr. Rochester seemed almost nervous. "She came to my bedside, put her candle close to my face, and stared fiercely at me. I must have fainted, and I suppose she left. Now, can you tell me who or what that woman was?" "Jane, you are too sensitive. That was just a dream. Don't think about it any more," he answered comfortingly. "That's just what I said to myself when I woke up this morning. But when I looked on the floor, there was the veil, torn in two halves." I felt Mr. Rochester suddenly tremble. "To think what might have happened," he cried, throwing his arms around me. "Thank God it was only the veil." After a few moments, he said calmly, "Now, Jane, be sensible. That woman must have been Grace Poole. There is no other explanation." "Perhaps you're right," I admitted slowly. "One day I'll explain to you why I keep her in my house. But tonight, go and sleep in Adele's room. You'll be quite safe there. Just dream about our future." Chapter 17. The Wedding Day. We had no friends or family to accompany us to the church. I had not told my Reed cousins about our wedding, but I had written to my uncle, John Eyre, in Madeira. Mr. Rochester was in such a hurry that he only allowed me a short time to put on my wedding dress and veil. "Jane, you look lovely," he said, "but you can only have 10 minutes for breakfast." We almost ran up the road to the church, his strong hand holding mine. His dark face looked stern, and he did not speak. I did not notice the weather or my surroundings at all. I only wanted to know why he looked so fierce. Suddenly, he noticed how pale I was, and stopped for a moment to let me get my breath back. Then we walked more slowly into the church. The priest and the clerk were waiting for us. There was nobody else except 2 strangers who were standing at the back of the church. The ceremony began, and soon I heard the priest come to the point in the wedding where he had to ask, "Is there any reason why these 2 people should not be married?" The priest paused for a second, as was the custom, but before he could continue, a voice from the back of the church said clearly, "There is a reason." The priest looked up from his book and stood silent. Mr. Rochester said in his deep voice, without turning his head, "Continue with the ceremony." Silence fell again. Then the priest shook his head. "I must investigate this first," he said. One of the strangers from the back of the church came forward and said calmly and quietly, "This wedding cannot continue because Mr. Rochester is already married." I felt as if I had been hit. Mr. Rochester's whole face was like colourless marble. Without speaking or smiling, he was holding me tightly round the waist, as if he would never let go. "Who are you?" he growled at the stranger. "And tell me what you know of this supposed wife of mine." "I'm a lawyer, sir. I have a certificate here proving that you married Bertha Mason in the West Indies 15 years ago. That may prove I've been married, but it doesn't prove that she's still alive." "I can produce a witness," said the lawyer, "who has seen her alive recently." "Produce him or go to hell," said Mr. Rochester. "Here he is. Mr. Mason," called the lawyer. And the second stranger slowly approached from the shadows, his pale face looking frightened. Mr. Rochester, staring furiously at him, raised his strong right arm to knock him down. "No!" cried Mason, trembling. Mr. Rochester dropped his arm and turned away in disgust. "Sir," said the priest, frowning, "don't forget we are in the house of God. Mr. Mason, please tell us if this gentleman's wife is still alive." "She's at Thornfield Hall," replied Mason in a weak voice. "I'm her brother, and I've seen her there." "Thornfield Hall?" cried the priest. "I've lived here for years, and I've never heard of a Mrs. Rochester." "I was careful to keep her a secret," murmured Mr. Rochester, frowning. After a few minutes' thought, he announced, "I must reveal the truth, I suppose. There will be no wedding today. No doubt God will punish me for this. What this lawyer says is true. I've been married, and my wife still lives. I was tricked into marrying her when I was young in the West Indies. Madness runs in her family, but they didn't tell me that. Now she's more of an animal than a woman. I keep her locked away, guarded by my old servant, Grace Poole. I invite you all to come to my house to see her, and to judge whether I had the right to ask this innocent young girl to marry me. Follow me." Still holding me firmly, he left the church, followed by the others. At the door of Thornfield Hall, Mrs. Fairfax, Adele, and the servants rushed forward, smiling, to congratulate us. "Too late," cried the master, waving them away. "Your congratulations are 15 years too late." We all went up to the top floor and entered the room where Mason had been attacked. Mr. Rochester lifted the curtain, opened the secret door, and showed us the little room. Grace Poole was making soup over a fire, and behind her a shape crawled on the floor. It was hard to say whether it was animal or human. It growled like a wild animal, but it wore clothes and had long, thick, dark hair. "How are you, Mrs. Poole?" asked the master. "And how is your patient today?" "Not bad, sir," answered Grace. "But be careful. She'll try and bite you if she sees you, sir." Just then the shape turned, and with a fierce cry attacked Mr. Rochester violently. I recognised her dark, ugly face. They struggled for a moment, and then he held her down and, with Mrs. Poole's help, tied her to a chair. He turned to the others with a bitter smile. "You see, gentlemen, this is my wife. This is the partner I have to live with forever. And instead, I wish to have this," laying his hand on my shoulder. "This young girl. Can you honestly blame me? Compare the two and then judge me." We all left the room silently. As we went downstairs, the lawyer said to me, "I know you weren't aware of this, Miss Eyre. Nobody will blame you, and Mr. Mason will tell your uncle so when he goes back to Madeira." "My uncle? Do you know him?" I asked, surprised. "I'm his lawyer. Mr. Mason and he have often done business together. On his way back to the West Indies, Mr. Mason stopped in Madeira and stayed with Mr. Eyre, who mentioned that his niece was going to marry a Mr. Rochester." "Yes, I wrote to tell him I was getting married," I said. "Well, when Mr. Mason explained that Mr. Rochester was already married, your uncle sent him straight back to England to prevent you from marrying and making a terrible mistake. I'm afraid your uncle is very ill and will probably die soon, so I think you had better stay in England until you receive further news of him." After the gentleman had left, I entered my room and locked the door. Slowly I took off my wedding dress and veil. I was weak and exhausted, and only just beginning to realize what had happened. Could I ever again trust the being I had turned into a sort of god? I would not think of him as evil, but he could not have felt real love for me. How foolish I had been to believe him and love him so much. My hopes were all dead, and my future was empty. I lay on my bed, faint and wishing for death, while darkness swam around me. Chapter 18. Mr. Rochester's Explanation. Sometime in the afternoon I recovered a little, but I felt faint as I stood up and realized I had not eaten anything all day. So I opened my bedroom door and almost fell over Mr. Rochester, who was sitting in a chair just outside. "I've been waiting for you all this time, Jane," he said, "and I haven't heard you scream or shout or cry. Aren't you angry with me? I never meant to hurt you. Will you ever forgive me?" He sounded so sincere that I forgave him at once in my heart. "Scold me, Jane. Tell me how wicked I am," he said. "Sir, I can't. I feel tired and weak. I want some water." He took me in his arms and carried me downstairs to the library, where he put me in front of the fire and gave me a glass of wine. I began to feel better. He bent to kiss me, but I turned my face determinedly away. "What?" he cried. "You refuse to kiss me? Because I'm Bertha Mason's husband? Is that it?" "Yes, sir." "I know you very well, Jane. I know how firm you are when you've decided something. You're planning to destroy my hope of happiness. You intend to be a stranger to me from now on. And if I'm friendly towards you in future, you'll remind yourself. That man nearly made me his mistress. I must be ice cold to him. And ice cold is what you'll be." "It's true, sir," I said, trying to stop my voice from trembling, "that everything around me has changed. So I must change too. Adele must have a new governess." "Oh, Adele will go to boarding school. I've already decided that. And you and I will both leave this house, this narrow stone hell, this house of living death. We can never be happy here, under the same roof as that woman. Oh, I hate her." "You shouldn't hate her, sir," I said. "It's not her fault she's mad, poor thing." "Jane, my darling, it's not because she's mad that I hate her. If you were mad, I wouldn't hate you. I'd look after you lovingly. But why talk of madness? We are all ready to travel. Everything is packed. Tomorrow we'll leave. I have a place to go to where nobody will find us or talk about us." "And take Adele with you, sir. She'll be a companion for you," I interrupted. I knew I had to tell him soon. "Adele? What do you mean, Jane? She's going to school. I don't want her, I want you with me. Do you understand?" I did, but I slowly shook my head. He was becoming angry and was staring fiercely at me. He looked as if he was about to lose control. I was not at all afraid, because I knew I still had the power to calm him. So I took his hand and stroked it, saying, "Sit down, sir. I'll talk or listen to you as long as you like." I had been struggling with tears for some time, and now I let them flow freely. It was a great relief. "Don't cry, Jane. Please be calm," he begged. "How can I be calm when you're so angry?" "I'm not angry, but I love you so much, and your pale little face looks so stern and decided." He tried to put his arm around me, but I would not let him. "Jane," he said sadly, "you don't love me then." "I do love you," I answered, "more than ever. But this is the last time I can say it. There is only one thing for me to do, but you'll be furious if I mention it." "Oh, mention it. If I'm angry, you can always burst into tears," he said with a half-smile. "Mr. Rochester, I must leave you. I must start a new life among strangers." "Of course. I told you we would leave. I'll ignore that nonsense about you leaving me. You'll be Mrs. Rochester, and I'll be your husband until I die. We live happily and innocently together in a little white house I have in the south of France. Jane, don't shake your head or I'll get angry. Sir, your wife is alive, I dared to say, although he was looking aggressively at me. And if I lived with you like that, I'd be your mistress. I'm a fool, he said suddenly. I haven't told you the whole story. Oh, I'm sure you'll agree when you know everything. Listen, Jane, you know that my father loved money very much. I heard someone say that, yes, sir. Well, he hated the idea of dividing the family property, so he left it all to my elder brother. But that meant I would be poor unless I married a rich wife. So he decided I should marry Bertha Mason, the daughter of his wealthy friend, Jonas Mason. I was young and easily impressed, so when I saw her in the West Indies, beautiful and elegantly dressed, I thought I loved her. What a fool I was then. After the wedding, I learned that my bride's mother and younger brother were both mad. Dick Mason will probably be in the same state one day. My father knew all this, but did not tell me. I soon found that Bertha and I had nothing in common. Not only was she coarse and stupid, her madness also made her violent. I lived with her for 4 years. By now my father and brother were dead, so I was rich, but I considered myself poor because I was tied to a mad wife until death. I pity you, sir. I do pity you. Pity, Jane, is an insult from some people, but from you I accept it as the mother of love. Well, I had moments of despair when I intended to shoot myself, but in the end I decided to bring the madwoman back to Thornfield Hall, where nobody knew that we were married. She has lived here ever since. Even Mrs. Fairfax and the servants don't know the whole truth about her. But although I pay Grace Poole well and trust her absolutely, she sometimes drinks too much and allows the creature to escape. Twice she's got out of her room at night, as you know. The first time she nearly burnt me in my bed, and the second time she visited you, and must have been reminded of her own wedding day by seeing your wedding dress. And what did you do, sir, when you had brought her here? I travelled all over Europe, Jane. I was looking for a good and intelligent woman to love. But you couldn't marry, sir, I interrupted. I believed I could. I thought I might find some reasonable woman who would understand my case and accept me. Well, sir, did you? Not in Europe, Jane, where I spent 10 long years looking for an ideal. I tried taking mistresses like Celine, the French dancer, but finally, bitter and disappointed with my wasted life, I returned to Thornfield on a frosty winter afternoon. And when my horse slipped and fell on the ice, a little figure appeared and insisted on helping me. In the weeks that followed, I began to depend on that bird-like little figure for my happiness and new interest in life. Don't talk any more of the past, sir, I said, wiping a secret tear from my eye. No, Jane, you're right. The future is much brighter. You understand now, don't you? I've wasted half my life in misery and loneliness, but now I've found you. You are at the centre of my heart. It was stupid of me to try to marry you like that without explaining. I should have confessed everything as I do now, and appealed to your great generosity of spirit. I promised to love you and stay with you forever. Jane promised me the same. A pause. Why are you silent, Jane? This was a terrible moment for me. In the struggle and confusion that was going on in my heart, I knew that he loved me and I loved him, but I also knew that I must leave him. Jane, just promise me I will be yours. Mr. Rochester, I will not be yours. Another pause. Jane, he said with a gentleness that cut into my soul. Jane, do you intend us to live apart forever? I do. Jane, bending towards me and kissing me, is that still your intention? It is, I replied, pulling away from him. Oh, Jane, this is a bitter shock. It would not be wicked to love me. It would be wicked to do what you want. Jane, just imagine my horrible life when you have gone. I shall be alone with that madwoman upstairs. Where shall I find friendship and hope? You can only trust in God and yourself. Live without doing wrong and die hoping to go to heaven. That's impossible without you. And you have no family to offend by living with me. He was beginning to sound desperate. I knew that what he said was true. However, in my heart, I also knew I was right to leave. He seemed to read my thoughts. Rushing furiously across the room, he seized me violently and stared fiercely into my eyes. He could have broken me in two with one hand, but he could not break my spirit. Small and weak as I was, I stared firmly back at him. Your eyes, Jane, he said, are the eyes of a bird, a free, wild being. Even if I break your cage, I can't reach you, beautiful creature. You'll fly away from me. But you could choose to fly to me. Come, Jane, come. He let me go and only looked at me. How hard it was to resist that look. I'm going, I said. Does my deep love mean nothing to you? Oh, Jane, my hope, my love, my life. And he threw himself despairingly on the sofa. I had reached the door, but I could not leave. I walked back, bent over him, and kissed his cheek. Goodbye, my dear master, I said. May God protect you. Without your love, Jane, my heart is broken, he said. But perhaps you will, so generously, give me your love after all. He jumped up, with hope in his eyes, holding out his arms to me. But I turned and ran out of the room. That night, I only slept a little, dreaming of the Red Room at Gateshead. The moonlight shone into my bedroom as it did then, and I saw a vision on the ceiling, a white figure looking down on me. It seemed to whisper to my spirit, Daughter, leave now before you are tempted to stay. Mother, I will, I answered. And when I woke up, although it was still dark outside, I wrapped up some spare clothes in a parcel and put a little money in a purse. As I crept downstairs, I could hear Mr. Rochester in his room, walking up and down and sighing. I could find heaven in this room if I wanted. I just had to enter and say, I will love you and live with you through life until death. My hand moved towards the handle, but I stopped myself and went miserably downstairs and out of the house. Setting out on the road, I could not help thinking of Mr. Rochester's despair when he found himself abandoned. I hated myself for wounding him, and for perhaps driving him to a life of wickedness or even death. I wanted desperately to be with him, to comfort him, but somehow I made myself keep walking, and when a coach passed, I arranged to travel on it as far as my money would pay for. Inside the coach, I cried the bitterest tears of my life. Part 4. A Woman at Moor House. Chapter 19. Finding Shelter. I was put down at Whitcross, a crossroads on the moor, after travelling for 2 days in the coach. As it rolled away, I realised I had left my parcel inside and given the coachman all the coins in my purse. I was alone on the open moor, with no money or possessions. Lonely white roads stretched across the great wide moors as far as the hills. I was glad to see there were no towns here, because I did not want people to question me or pity me. So I walked across the moor until I found a dry place to sleep, in the shelter of a small hill. Luckily it was a warm night with no rain. The next day was hot and sunny, but I needed food and water, so I could not stay on the moor. Taking one of the white roads, I eventually found a small village. I needed all my courage to knock on some of the doors, asking if there was any paid work I could do. None of the village people could help me, and I could not bring myself to beg for food, although by now I felt weak and faint. At the baker's, I offered to exchange my leather gloves for a small cake, But the baker's wife looked at my dirty clothes and said, "I'm sorry, but how do I know you haven't stolen them?" All I ate that day was a piece of bread, which I begged from a farmer eating his supper. I spent another night on the moor, but this time the air was cold and the ground was damp. Next day, I walked from house to house again, looking in vain for work. I was now very weak from lack of food, and I began to wonder why I should struggle to stay alive when I did not want to live. It was getting dark again, and I was alone on the moor. In the distance, I could see a faint light, and I decided to try to reach it. The wind and rain beat down on me, and I fell down several times, but finally I arrived at a long, low house, standing rather isolated in the middle of the moor. Hiding near the door, I could just see into the kitchen through a small uncurtained window. There was an elderly woman, who might be the housekeeper, mending clothes, and two young ladies who seemed to be learning a language with dictionaries. The kitchen looked so clean and bright, and the ladies so kind and sensible, that I dared to knock at the door. The elderly woman opened it, but she must have thought I was a thief or a beggar, because she refused to let me speak to the young ladies. The door closed firmly, shutting me out from the warmth inside. I dropped onto the wet doorstep, worn out and hopeless, prepared to die. There the young lady's brother found me when he returned home a few minutes later, and he insisted, much against the housekeeper's wishes, on bringing me into the house. They gave me bread and milk and asked my name. "Jane Elliot," I replied. I did not want anybody to know where I had come from. To their further questions, I answered that I was too tired to speak. Finally, they helped me upstairs to a bedroom, and I sank gratefully into a warm, dry bed. For 3 days and nights, I lay in bed, exhausted by my experiences and hardly conscious of my surroundings. As I was recovering, Hannah, the housekeeper, came to sit with me and told me all about the family. She had known them since they were babies. Their mother had been dead for years, and their father had died only 3 weeks before. The girls, Diana and Mary Rivers, had to work as governesses, as their father had lost a lot of money in business. St John, their brother, was the vicar in the nearest village, Morton. They only used this house, called Moor House, in the holidays. When I felt strong enough to get dressed and go downstairs, Diana and Mary looked after me very kindly and made me feel welcome in their pleasant home. Their brother, however, seemed stern and cold. He was between 28 and 30, fair-haired and extremely handsome. Diana and Mary were curious about my past, but sensitive enough to avoid asking questions which would hurt me. St John, on the other hand, made determined efforts to discover who I was, but I, just as firmly, refused to explain more than necessary. I told them only that after attending Lowood School, I became a governess in a wealthy family where an unfortunate event, not in any way my fault, caused me to run away. That was all I was prepared to say. I offered to do any kind of work, teaching, sewing, cleaning, so that I could become independent again. St John approved of my keenness to work and promised to find me some paid employment.